Lawrence van Lingen is the founder of Inner Runner, an initiative that aims to transform your running and movement potential. During his 20 years of experience as a bodywork specialist, he has helped thousands of people, including world-class athletes, overcome pain and injury and enhance their performance and well-being. He believes that we can all rediscover our innate ability to run and move with ease by following the Inner Runner path. He is not only a professional, but also a friend and a guide to many people who want to improve their lives through running and movement. Hey folks, welcome to The Natural You. I'm Tim Wood, your host. Today, I've got an old friend with me, Lawrence van Lingen. When I first met Lawrence, we were both studying chiropractic in Durban, and we even ended up staying in a house together along with some other mates. And Lawrence then was an elite triathlete, competed at the Worlds, I think it was, in his age group, and super fit guy. And at that point, he was going out with his now wife, Gwen Griffiths, who was an Olympic athlete. And so we were running together and doing events. And I remember Gwen very kindly ran with me one day and saw that as a poor student, my shoes were absolutely shot with holes in. And she took pity on me and gave me one of her shoes from one of her sponsors, which was half a size too small, but I was going to be damned if I wasn't going to fit into them. So I wore those for a year. I don't know what that did to my running. So welcome, Lawrence.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. That's a great story. I forgot about that. Thank you for reminding me.
Well, please remind her too. I'm grateful.
Oh, well.
So Lawrence has done a lot of work since his chiropractic degree, and he now has a program called the Inner Runner. Lawrence, please tell us how you came about the Inner Runner and what led you to where you are now in helping runners of all different abilities.
Well, Inner Runner happened when I moved to the States. Very specifically, I think segueing into that, I was always into rehabilitation more so than possibly other people that study chiropractic. And I was working with runners and a lot of elite runners early in my practice. I worked with Josiah Tugwani, who was an Olympic gold medalist, Zitaleli Senkwe, who was a South African record holder, William Matolo, who won the New York Marathon, Gwen, so I was immersed in a very elite running culture early on, so that was always part of it. And then in South Africa, I started getting very into fascia and working with fascia and movement and rehabilitation. But the specific sort of birthplace of Inner Runner was, I was in America. And in the States, for various reasons, I didn't license again as a chiropractor. And anyway, I was working with the Santa Cruz Syndicate, which is Greg Minov, which is a South African downhill mountain biker. And I fell on a track and I ended up breaking my forearm, and it broke too easily. And I just knew. And we had an x-ray and it turned out I had a tumor in my forearm. And the birth of Inner Runner was to keep me from worrying about the tumor in my forearm, which we didn't know what it was. And I'd go for long walks on the beach. And every day I walked, I would study one part of anatomy or movement, like the big toe. And I'd look at the muscles, the innervation, the nerves, the joint, the structure. And then I'd go for like a 2-hour walk on the beach, just thinking about the big toe, the muscles, the innervation, the movement, and what it does, how it affects our posture. I'd walk in different ways and just anything to keep myself thinking about sort of, like amputating my arm or chemo or dying. So that was it. It was also an acknowledgement that I might lose an arm. And maybe wouldn't be able to treat, and possibly needed to learn how to teach people how to move rather than treat people how to move. And so that was actually the birth of Inner Runner. These, and then it's just sort of grown from there. And like I was saying to you a little earlier, it should be in a human. I treat all runners. There we go. I treat all humans. I used to treat babies. In my practice in South Africa, I treat old, young, people that can run, people that can't run, elites, non-elites. There's no barrier to who I work with.
And so the concepts of the Inner Runner are applicable to everyone?
Yes, very much.
And I mean, I personally love running. I found that out of all the activities I do lots of different sports, cycling and kayaking and swimming. and I enjoy movement generally, but there's something about running that gives me just that little bit extra. And I don't know if it's just because I'm moving my body in a very natural way. I mean, I like walking, but I don't seem to get the extra buzz that I get from running. Is that what do you think that might be from, or do you experience that too?
There's a few things. I think some people are more sensitive. So there is a thing, runner's high. Okay, and it's particularly sort of related to running. And there's various theories on that. Some people have a distinctly more profound runner's high than others. And some people just have a sense of well-being that comes with after exercise. It's not as sort of pronounced. And I think also humans love topography that move towards your eyes. I actually had a client that I worked with that is addicted, sort of, to watching. So apparently in Scandinavia, they put GoPros in the front of trains, and then the trains go through this beautiful scenery, and she was just mesmerized by it. And after a stressful day of work, she'd sit and just watch the scenery coming towards your eyes. So humans love topography moving towards your eyes, and I think running, and it's more powerful if it's self-generated. So it's sitting in front of a screen watching topography towards you is not the same as self-generated. Making the topography come towards you. So I think there's a very big element of that. And then I think, with running, basically, from an evolutionary standpoint and how we evolved to move, we evolved to run. And when you run, you end up stacking, you use your entire body. It might not feel so. You might feel like, oh, my quads are burning, but every single joint is stacked on top of another. And when we get into working with runners, a lot of what we're doing is teaching people stack and how to stack their bones, and also how to move from the center out. And a lot of that, when people get it right, like small variances in your toe actually create like if you're 4 foot pronate, your shoulder moves out the way. If your head is over your foot, you're more stable. So this elegant dance and running is very, very, very complex, and I think there's nothing quite like it.
Yeah. And like you said, you're getting obviously that visual stimuli, you're getting all that proprioceptive stimuli from all your joints, whether they're stacked correctly or not, they're still giving you input. And and I guess when they're stacked better, then you're getting a much more harmonious input into your brain. And so it's less of a workout and more of a...
It changes almost from nociceptive to good proprioception, Here's a really good example. Like if you look at my wrist, I've got a really skinny wrist, right? So if I'm going to punch someone or something, my wrist needs to be neutral. I punch something or someone like that, it's going to hurt. Yet people don't seem to apply that same sort of thought process to, let's say, your ankle joint. But when you run, you put 2.5 times to 3 times your body weight through your ankle. And so teaching people to stack your joints can completely transform your running experience from something that could be tough or sore, painful, and inflammatory to non-inflammatory. And exercise is the greatest anti-inflammatory in the world and the greatest antioxidant in the world. Nothing comes close to the anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties of exercise, of running or exercise. Yet we as humans, because we have a brain that rationalizes things and can mess anything up, we can often make exercise into an inflammatory activity, not an anti-inflammatory activity. And I think we need to learn to move well and move kindly and respect our body.
And do you think is that because we're just doing too much of it, or we're just doing it incorrectly?
I think you can't separate motion and emotion. So I think it's actually really important how you think and how you feel when you exercise. At the moment, I'm in a temporary space here in Boulder, right? And in the afternoons, some people that like to throw heavy weights around come out. But these guys start listening to thrash metal and like death metal, and I can sort of hear them in the background, and I'm just like, well, okay, so you're in there, you're G'd up, and you're pumping, you're throwing weights around, and you're listening to like sort of very, very heavy metal music. And that might seem like a good idea at the time, but then what do you go home and say, hey, hi, honey, gym was amazing. And what you put in is what we internalize. And I think it's a lot of people run. Here's a simple thought process or exercise process. Like, let's say you go for a run to calm yourself down, and that a lot of people do it, or to get out of your head, or to have a stress release from the day. Okay, but it takes about you running with that, if you can see me, this is my running with a bit of anger, and I'm thinking, and I'm having an argument with someone in my head, right? And this is me opening up and being accepting, and I'm enjoying nature. And it's two completely different postures. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people run 35 minutes angry and then have 5 minutes of relief at the
Yeah,
end,
yeah, yeah.
rather than clearing their mind, setting the intention before
Mm.
you run, and trying as best as you can to be open and receiving and relaxed and comfortable in your space, and really getting your mindset right before you run. And then you have a 40-minute healing experience, much more than a internalizing angry with maybe a bit of 5 minutes of release and endorphins at the end.
That's really cool. And so, how would you get someone into that kind of state beforehand? What kind of tips would you give that person? Is it breathing? Is it meditation, visualization? What kind of things would you?
Yeah, yeah, a little bit of all of the above. I think I worked with an elite guy. He's one of the greatest of all times, and he had like multiple career-ending injuries. And one of the things I said, look, you're going to work on meditation, and his wife packed out laughing. She says, "You're not going to get this guy to meditate. He can't sit still for 3 minutes, right?" And I think with meditation, you can't think of nothing. No one can, right? So let's say there's some techniques where you focus on your breath. I think for people that like running, you like movement. And what I do with elite athletes or athletes is turn running into a meditation, because it's you notice how your body moves, and that gets you out of your head and your argument. And so much of your body's moving. It's delightful. So this guy went from hating meditation, but when he realized movement was meditation, he loved it. And so we kind of touched on this earlier before this conversation. Is like I'm really big on somatovisceral movement. I think it's a movement that's deficient in our modern society, certainly the Western culture, and that's slow, soft spinal movements. And so, before you go out the door, we'll do an example now, and do some somatovisceral movement. And then when you run, you'll have a much better connection with your spine, with your center, with movement, and it's distracting. It's like instead of chewing on an argument with your work colleague or your spouse or whoever a lot of people are in this day and age, because of social media, people are very polarized and feel very aggrieved by externalities. And running, you don't want to run around focusing on those externalities. You need to focus on the internal, and then you can replace the external with the internal. It's like if you have a child and he's playing with a bat and ball, you can't take it away from him. You have to say, well, look, don't you want to play with a truck? So I think what we need to do is replace all of those anxieties and externalities with intrinsic movement, with a sense of body, with a sense of, like self-movement, and then go for a run, and you'll have a far more rewarding experience. And your injury rates, I guarantee you, and what you get out of running will completely transform. And an easy example for breathing this is from the breath guy, what's his name, James Nestor. If you pinch your nose 50%, okay, so half closed, and you breathe in through your nose, you typically immediately feel your belly and your diaphragm activating. And diaphragm is huge. It's a balancer, it's a stabilizer. It controls your mood, your emotion, almost everything. And just as simple as taking 5 to 10 breaths in through your nose and then just breathe out through your nose before you go for a run. When we sit, our diaphragm gets pushed up. I'm sitting in the chair, I'm sort of squashing and I'm slouching a little bit, bad Lawrence. But if I breathe through my nose, I want to open up and sit up a little straighter.
Yeah, totally.
And respect my diaphragm.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there. And so just something as simple as that, going for a run, can really reframe the whole run experience that comes afterwards. And what you put in is what you get out.
And I really love that, turning running into meditation, or turning movement into a meditation, because it's very much, get your pillow and cross your legs, and for a lot of people, that's the first kind of, that's what they think meditation is. So having something where you can get into that state. And I find that I tend to find that more in swimming, really, because the external stimuli, the water across my body, my eyes are often closed, and I can feel the stimulation of the water across my body. So it's and the rhythmic movement of my stroke tends to get me there more so than running. I guess it's because I'm looking around and a bit more alert. But being alert and still meditative is a beautiful space to get into.
Yeah, well, swimming's the womb, and quiet. So you found a lot of people with traumatic backgrounds or traumatic home life, or very loud and whatever, gravitate to swimming, as an escape. And again, swimming is a matter of visceral movement. You take away gravity and you start moving organically, and breath control and all of the above. But running in nature is extraordinary because that your eye movements, the tracking of your head, you hear a sound and you look. I don't know if you know, like do you know what EM? Well, you probably do, but some people might not know. But EMDR, is like a technique in psychology where you watch a light from the left to the right, and while you're doing it, you recount a traumatic experience, and it's very, very helpful in healing for a lot of people for trauma. If you have a skilled therapist guiding you through a previously traumatic event, it helps you sort of get it off your chest or out of it. But that was formulated when a therapist was in Stanford, was walking and realized when she walked, I think it was she walked through nature, and she was much calmer and she could present and she had much less anxiety when she was lecturing. Whereas if she went from her office across the hallway, that was not the case. And she says, well, what is it that I do in nature? And she realized her eyes track from left to right. And so now we've monetized it and bottled it, whereas, what happens to going for a walk in nature with your friend and getting stuff off your chest, shooting the breeze, they're like the poor man's therapy, and it's remarkably effective. And for concussion, I'm dealing with a triathlete that was knocked by, had an accident and was concussed in a race. And part of her protocol is walk in nature. Money can't buy the eye, the left, the sense, the wind in your skin, the sun, that whole thing. And we lacking it. I heard I was consulting for Red Bull at one stage, right? And anyway, I was at Red Bull head office, and they have this guy, and he puts a cap on your head, and it measures your brain waves, and then he's got sensors everywhere. And basically, they were teaching athletes to pass a lie detector test, right? So what I mean by that is they taught the athlete to slow their breathing down, and then they'd notice that their heart rate slowed down as well, and that their brainwave activity changed, and then you'd go through multiple sessions like this, and eventually these athletes could control their sweat rate. They could control it all because of the biofeedback, right? And the aim of this was to help them get in the zone before they went before a big event, right? And I said, you do realize that if you put that person in Africa in the savannah, he'd attain that state in 30 seconds. So imagine, if you will, just imagine you go into the savannah and you say, okay, Tim, downwind, upwind, there's a herd of elephants, okay? Stay downwind from them, okay? It's 2 in the afternoon, by 4 o'clock you better be at camp because then the predators come out, and, and then you're immersed in that environment. You would immediately stop, pop your jaw so that you could hear clearer, which relaxes your jaw muscles and your facial muscles, and you wouldn't move until you'd integrated into your surroundings. And once you had a sense of where everything is around you, and the direction and the sense and the sun on your skin and the wind, because all of these now suddenly matter, and the smell, and then start walking, you'd be perfectly in that state of perfect, it's inherent in us. Because if you're overstimulated before a race, that's bad, and if you're understimulated, it's bad. That perfect state of arrival, your pupils would dilate or constrict so that your peripheral vision would improve. You'd have, and so it's innate in us, and we blind to it because I don't know, we're just overstimulated.
It's a huge thing. I mean, when you were talking about running and just being in nature, when I see people running with headphones on, I just don't get it. And they go, they like it and it helps them. And I know there's some research to show that certain beats can help you run better. But I just can't bring myself to ever put earphones on when I run. Occasionally I'll walk and I'll listen to a podcast or a book or something, but I'm never going to be doing that on the bike. And I see now, they got earphones for when you're swimming. It's like, why would you want more stimulation?
Yeah, well, interesting. So walking is very integrative and very creative. So it is actually I think there's massive benefits of walking nature, but it's very, very good time to people think better on their feet. And walking and assimilating podcasts and thinking on your feet or writing, whatever, doing creative work when you're walking. I mean, all the greats did it. Steve Jobs, Darwin, Freud, everyone, walking. absolutely get it. I'll often walk and listen to a podcast. I used to walk and listen to a podcast on the way to work. But, one of my big pet peeves is a metronome. Teaching people to run with a certain cadence. Like, people's cadence can be so variable, and your cadence is what it is for a reason. And I understand the logic behind a higher turnover decreases ground contact, and that elite runners and run with a higher cadence. But I've worked with elite runners, and like Josiah Tagwani was 44 kilograms, 42 kilograms, and took me up to here. so in pounds, it's like 90 pounds. And his turnover was 190, but I'm 6'2", and why would a hummingbird have the same cadence as a pigeon or a seagull or an albatross?
Yeah.
And then often our central movement is shut down. And a constant, repetitive beat is staccato, and you play drums like that before walk to stiffen your spine, to make you aggressive. And it's an externality that's being imprinted on you. Running should be an expression of your authentic self for where you are in that moment in time. If you want to improve your running, improve yourself. But to have that externality of tuck, 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 and you've now got to be a good soldier and take steps exactly to the metronome, and somehow that's going to make it better. When just logic will say, if you're running badly, taking more bad steps a minute might not be the answer to your problem. So it's extraordinary, but humans we can get ourselves in a pickle.
I did a chi running course, which I found hugely beneficial, but they recommended a metronome, and I was just like, I bought one on the recommendation. I put it on. I go, this is just, it didn't make sense. I couldn't connect with it all, and it's still sitting somewhere in a cupboard, batteries flat. But I'm so glad you did that. You said that, because I didn't put it two and two together like you have. I just thought, this just feels weird, and I just put it down.
Yeah, we actually need to slow down time when you run. You need to have a sense of you have more than enough time. Really good runners will articulate running like this. They land, load, and then push off. Like 3 distinct phases. It comes up again and again and again. Sometimes it's 2 phases, land, push. But most of them land, travel forward, and a delayed push. And what happens with a metronome, or people that work with cadence, what you do is you pick up. You pick your feet up. No one increases their cadence by putting the foot down further behind the hip. That's never happened in the history of humankind, I don't think. Okay, and as soon as you pick your feet up, you're activating your hip flexors. And humans should run with extension, where the back of the horse, not the front of the horse. Like if you imagine, if you will, like crawling on all fours, or a chimpanzee, they'll pull the ground with their front feet, but they'll extend you kick with your legs.
That's where the power is.
And we have to use your glute max, which is the largest, most aerobic muscle in your body, and it's an extensor, and it's a postural support muscle. It has to extend when you run. And what happens is, working in your cadence, you pick your feet up and you put the bias immediately to your hip flexors. And the hip flexors, due to anatomy, go up via the psoas, connect to the diaphragm. If you run on your anterior chain or forefoot running, you tighten up that whole system, and it affects your breath, your posture, your movement, your mindset. So for a lot of reasons, I really do encourage people to use caution when increasing cadence or for metronome. It can really fry your nervous system. I work with some of the elite athletes that have been, let's call it anterior chain, not posterior chain, biased. They're all insomniacs, they don't sleep. And so helping them find their posterior chain and hip extension, their whole nervous system calms down. They start to sleep, and they start to get comfortable in their own skin, and they start to reframe their relationship with running. And something that I picked up when I used to work in court and with work-related disorders is people that are time-pressed immediately experience tension in their trapezius and lower back, and to the point of pain. And this is in big studies. You put someone in a workplace under time pressure, their traps get tight and their lower back gets tight immediately. And so if you're coaching someone saying increase your cadence, immediately their back and their trapezius tighten up. And their sense of time diminishes. They now feel hurried and rushed. And in no form or sphere in the world, in no form of mastery, like martial arts or penmanship or I don't know anything, you learn the form slowly and the speed and power comes. Yet it is weird in running space, people are doing the cart before the horse. However you run in that moment is fine for you. Don't force it. If you want to see a change in your running, change yourself. That must come from within. And reframing, that's very, very empowering. and really, really important. And learn to extend from your hips and think about pressing the earth away from you. Glute max just basically extends or straightens your hip. And you need to think about walking and running by straightening
So
your
does
hip.
that
Is one of the
mean
best.
staying on your leg for longer as it goes behind you?
It does. And so people say, but ground contact time. But what happens when elite runners run really fast? The ground contact time doesn't change. And so, yeah, but in your mind, it'll feel like you stay on the ground longer.
Okay.
And the other one is I call it hips, heels, heart. And you can be really careful. A lot of what we do with runners, because we never want them to get injured, is we work on their form walking, and when they're running, we try not to get them to think. Because it's safer. You try and leave your heel on the ground when you're running, you might just flare up your Achilles or calf because it's not used to the load, and execution might not be really good in the beginning. So walking and just leaving your heel on the ground a little bit longer. We all so flexion based. We sit. I mean, kids are going to kindergarten at 3 and they sit in chairs, and we are so flexion based, and people are blind to it. And so really learning to extend from the hip opens you up, releases your spine, releases your breath. Just that notion of leave your heel on the ground a little bit when you're walking and try and press the earth away from you is two really, really safe cues. And the other one is get your head on top of your shoulders. If your head's forward, your feet will throw out forward in front of you. If you want to extend your stride behind you, your head has to be on top of your shoulders.
Head has to be on top of your shoulders, and you've
Yeah.
got to be staying on the ground for longer and then pushing the ground away from you. Are those the...
Yeah. And practice that walking and notice it happen. Notice that sensation when you run. Don't try and make it happen too much when you run.
So it's just kind of being aware of that, feel when it
Yeah.
feels right. And I guess when you do that, you'll start to get pleasant sensations and a sense of ease with that. Or does it feel like learning something new? Is it hard to feel that? Sometimes when you're learning a new technique, it feels awkward.
For some people, everyone's very different. So you've got to be quite careful of I wrote a blog once on the good horse and the bad horse, which I like, and so if you struggle with these concepts, it's not necessarily a bad thing, because it'll be more rewarding and you probably go further with your practice than someone where it comes easily. But I'm big on anterior chain and posterior chain. I mean, I've got a video of a guy who we basically, I use a flow rope, which I can, for everyone that listens to this podcast, we can do a lesson on flow rope. It's extraordinary, and how we teach the timing of running, and we can swap from anterior chain to posterior chain. And this dude had a 20-minute lesson, and he went for a run, and the next day he sent me a video of himself just basically crying with relief. Said it's the best run he's ever had, this emotional release that he had. It was completely transformative. But I know one guy, he's actually one of my best friends. I've been working with him for 5 years and he hasn't quite got it yet. But we're getting better at teaching people this. But
that's a learning too.
And I tell people, a lot of people, when they're running clicks for them, they send me a text saying, "Oh my God, I totally got it." So there is this almost like this promised land, or this when you get over the hump and you go, "Oh, that's what I'm supposed to be doing," and it's intrinsic and you know it. And like when I work with the athletes, they're so overcoached and they judge. I mean, remember, someone looks at your running form and says, this angle's wrong, your cadence is too slow, your foot slaps, you pronate. You're picking apart who they are. Your posture is a reflection of who you are as a human being. How you move is how you feel. Your posture is a reflection of your entire life experience. And it's not for us or anyone else to judge your entire life experience and tell you what your shortcomings are. And, a lot of really professional athletes are very, very insecure because they've been constantly, this is wrong, you've got to work on this. And so to get someone into a position where they authentically know and trust their movement is extraordinary. And it's hard to do, but it's so worth it. That's all I focus on. I'm only interested in helping people to authentically and deeply understand and trust their body and trust their movement, because when someone gets into that space, it's virtually like an enlightenment. And I don't care if for the rest of my life, if I get one more person into that state, it's worth it.
Yeah, beautiful. That sounds amazing. And if you let's say you pick up a postural issue, person's really flexed, kyphotic, and you don't want to, do you not point it out, or you just say this in this position, this and this is happening, or how do you bring about that gently so that they don't feel judged?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, well, don't judge them. So just the intent in a relationship,
Yeah.
But you can often point at what I really like doing, and I encourage, and part of the transformation of a really good athlete was we didn't make it about him. So organic or class settings. So in group settings, it's not about you. I can say, look, if you have a kyphotic spine and a head forward posture, this is what it does with running, and we can work on this, and let's do this drill and that drill. And you can see it in other people way easier than you can actually feel it in yourself or acknowledge it in yourself, and it's not about you. And that's a really, really safe space, that organic learning. And what happens is once people start solving movement and posture problems in themselves, you can start to recognize it in others. And that's the thing. And also in a group setting, it's amazing. You'll have trying to solve some movement problem and no one gets it. And someone at the back of the class gets it, and everyone's facing forward, and it's like dominoes. Suddenly, the whole class will get it. Like it's like this collective consciousness happens.
Yeah,
just one person in the class has to get it, and everyone will get it. So it is amazing.
That's. I mean, I love that group work is amazing in so many ways. Yeah. If you in any kind of therapeutic or setting where people are wanting to improve, I think it's amazing. Self work is important, but that group work can really just be that catalyst, can't it?
Yeah. Humans are visual and copycat, and we bounce. Like the culture is the coach. People are blind to what's imprinted on you by your culture. You only get it if you travel. Like you go to India and you realize like this is different.
Yeah.
I remember going to Korea and I just thought literally I could be on another planet. This is the most alien culture I've ever in my life experienced. But if I lived in Korea for 10 years, I think it's normal, and so a lot of like, we just assume things, then I had a gentle argument with this physiotherapy. She said, I practice evidence-based medicine, and I said, a lot of what you're talking about is assumed cultural norms, not evidence-based medicine.
That is so on the money, Lawrence. I think
it's just in the verdict.
Yeah, and what type of evidence and what level of evidence is a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
You say it's a cultural norm. This is our hierarchy, and this is what we're going to accept as evidence. It's like, forget personal insight. Shifting someone's whole perspective on life. That is quite different to N of 100. With this.
People that fall on the outside of the bell curve. We've got to respect that, and we're all outside of the bell curve in something in our life, and you need to figure out what that is, and you need to acknowledge it, and then hopefully you can accept that as a blessing. Because humans are so incredibly variable. Like people that can do math or can't do math, or creative or not creative.
Yeah.
You've got dark skin or light skin. I mean, it completely changes your relationship to sunscreen and vitamin D and where you shouldn't live.
Yeah.
If you're in the median, it's not a big deal. But if you're an outlier, you need to know you're an outlier, and you need to understand the rules that go with that. And we just, it's too difficult to prescribe a pill that applies to everyone. So there is that massive thing. We were talking about it like a little bit before. It's like pot plants. Humans are pot plants. If you put a pot plant in the right part of the room, it thrives. And you put it in the wrong part of the room or the wrong part of the house, or you put it outside, it dies. And humans, and we see this all the time, but we don't recognize. You see a kid that's terrible in one teacher and finds another teacher and just blossoms, or in the wrong job and you beat down and it's terrible, and then you find the right job and people just transform themselves, or kids that thought they was dumb at school go to college and find their niche and just become like PhDs. It's extraordinary when humans find their passion and their calling and their right sort of community, they just blossom. And a lot of people are running around, like if you take a polar bear out of the Arctic and you put him in San Diego Zoo and he's feeling poorly and he's got the mange or something, you can't give him a kale smoothie, right? He needs to get back to the Arctic and eat fish and seals, what his ancestors ate. And humans are like that, like, I'm feeling poorly, I need a kale smoothie. It's like, no, there's perhaps a bigger picture going on, but it's just difficult. It's difficult to and that's why with running and movement, the more authentic the movement, the more you learn to trust your own movement, the more you learn to trust yourself, the more you get comfortable in your own skin, you'll start to find everything starts to fall into place. You start to find your right environment and try.
You say you're talking about where you live, and we live in our bodies.
Yeah.
And so that's where you live. So firstly, you live in your body. And so when you give it the right movement and you put that in the right space,
Yeah.
then that makes such a, then the reason you're here is going to come out, right? It's going to give you that chance to flourish in all different areas.
Yeah. Yeah, as I say to athletes, I mean, like that are transforming or having a big transformation, I said, you must remember how you see the world and how the world sees you will change, because literally you reframing the way you move and you see the world, and everything will change. And humans hate change. Eh? Like we say we like change, but we're terrible at dealing with change, or not to get, it's like the lottery winner that the whole life you're poor, and then you think, if I just win the lottery, my life will change. You might want to work on your abundance mindset and your relationship with money and previous stories that have been imprinted on you, probably from your family, about money before you win the lottery. You know what I mean? And so there is an element of do a little bit of self-work, and because otherwise we can't graciously accept it when good things do come into our lives and we don't know what to do with it. We can't manage money. You can't manage money. And a lot of people are worse off after winning the lottery in whatever 4 years, and it's the same with interesting with movement and with a lot of things. We can ruin our gifts.
Yeah, and just with running, if people have said to themselves, "Oh, I'm not a runner," or "I can't run," or "Running's not for me," what gentle encouragement could you give them, or a pointer, or just a nice word or something that could just steer them back into that, or to re-explore that, start exploring it again in a different way?
Yeah, I think you've got to deal with the cards that you've got, not the cards that you want. And that's part of the human condition. It's really, really difficult to do. But everyone, like we basically populated Earth because we're so efficient at moving, and we're so good at moving. Our cousins, the chimpanzees, stay in the fruit trees because they're not very good at walking. They walk from side to side. It's incredibly inefficient. Humans can just walk forever and run. And there's a persistence hunting sort of theory. But you have to start with where you're at. If for whatever reason you find yourself grossly overweight and you've never done sport in your life, you're probably going to get hurt running. But that does not mean that you can't start working towards running. And I think if you put one foot in front of the other, there's lovely sayings. I'm terrible at remembering them, but like, as you, Rumi quote, as you put your foot in the way opens for you, something like that. And so there's certainly many things that you could do. If you can't run on land, you can run in water. And if you can't run in water, you can, whatever, you can, there is always something that you can do, and starting your process towards that. But a couple of years ago, I did an inner runner workshop in South Africa, and a guy said to me, "Lawrence, are there some people that just can't run? He's got massive compartment syndrome. He's had hip injuries, knee injuries, pain. They want to do a double fasciotomy on both his legs because of the compartment syndrome. It's so bad." And he just says, "Are there some people that can't run?" And he did the run workshop, and 2 days later he said, "I just ran 5K pain-free." 4 days later, he said, "I just ran 10K pain-free." And 6 or 7 days later, he said, "I just ran 21K pain-free." He said, "All I want to do is run a half marathon because my brother-in-law ran one," or something like that.
Yeah.
And I said, "Dude, you need to cool it. You're going to get hurt." But yeah, it can be pretty transformative when you figure out how to move. And a lot of our running. It's kind of a harsh truth, but you're injuring yourself. It's not a contact sport. No one's hurting you. And your relationship with ground, with gravity, with yourself, with how you move, all of that comes into play. And it's brutal to say, well, if running's hurting me on a bigger scale, you probably have relationship issues with one or all of the above.
Oh, that's profound. I mean, because I love running, but I've struggled on and off for a while, with various injuries, some from snowboarding and things. But yeah, that really hits home. So I think I'll have to lean into that a little bit more and explore that. Before we start kind of wrapping up a little bit, Lawrence, barefoot running is quite a kind of buzzword, and we've got 5-fingered shoes and all sorts of things to help us. And I remember one thing you posted quite a long time ago is that you have to earn the right to run barefoot.
Yes.
It stuck with me because I toyed with it a little bit, and I loved the idea, but I obviously hadn't done the preparation to get myself into that. Are there some guidelines? First of all, is barefoot running better than running in shoes, or with 5 fingers with shoes like that? And or is it better just to get some good trainers and off you go?
I think one is we could have a 10 podcast series on that little topic.
Just to end with.
Okay. So I love barefoot. I think it's really, really important. Okay.
Showing us his feet.
So you have more nerve endings in your feet than your hands. Okay, so let's just put that out there. And from a point of view of grounding, proprioception, I'll tell you a little story. Okay, I got a friend who loves running. Anyway, and I work with, and their kid wasn't walking. Okay, crawling, staying on his knees, not crawling, and like moms are all very okay with how good crawling is for you and a delayed walking until it starts. Until time starts pushing on, and then all of a sudden they're not that comfortable with this idea. It was interesting, and I looked at him at the house, and I just said, "This dude doesn't like the floor. It's too uniform and shiny and smooth. Take him outside." And kind of where they were living, they didn't have nice grass or a nice outside environment. Anyway, took him to the beach. Kid got in the sand, stood up, not climbed up, didn't pull himself up, literally erected himself and started walking and running around on the sand. And she's taking videos and showing the dad, this is amazing. Anyway, time to go home. Dad comes home from work. Kid's not walking at home. Okay. Go back to the beach. Kid runs around walking. Okay, so the proprioceptive stimulus up through your feet and into your arch is just unbelievably powerful for humans and for your cerebellum and for your function and your neural drive. Okay, but, and there is, you hear minimalist and maximalist. Okay, in my mind, be very clear with the distinction. There's barefoot and there's shoes, and even a sock is a shoe. Anything that puts a boundary layer between your foot and the ground is a shoe. And the more boundary layers, the more confused your foot gets. So imagine if you were a surgeon, you don't even want to operate with gloves, but you kind of have to. You ain't operating with 2 gloves because there's that difference between your hands, and so humans are like that. So that is really, really interesting, is the amount of boundary layers can rapidly confuse your foot and take away your proprioceptive thing. And I think an element of barefoot, so running and walking, you basically load up your whole body weight through one leg, okay, plus about a 10 or 15%. Running is 2.5 to 3.5 times your body weight through that leg. So the difference between walking barefoot and running barefoot is extraordinary. And you've got to be very, very careful running barefoot. And also our environment. Like, there's very few places that are actually safe to run barefoot. There's glass, can be needles. I've got someone, I run barefoot on the golf course. Well, that's amazing until you realize how much Roundup and weed killer they put on the golf course, and you come back with inflamed feet. And so it's very, very, it's a blessing to be able to run barefoot. I mean, like a nice beach is one of the environments, but Laguna Beach where we walk, which is pretty safe, we've often found shards of glass, and sharp glass too. And you slice your tendons of your foot and you are in big trouble. You step on a pebble and it hits a sesamoid bone at your big toe, or you fracture your sesamoid. I mean, you are in a world of pain for a very, very long time. And so barefoot running is amazing. It should be approached with caution and respect, because the consequences of getting these like a plantar plate foot tear is really, really something that most people battle to overcome. And so just be very, very patient, very, very cautious with barefoot running, especially if you're not used to it. Like we in Africa, we were playing rugby, 13 barefoot in frost.
Yeah.
It's a little different from someone that's never really walked outside barefoot in their entire lives. And they're 40 and they read an inspiring blog. There's two different narratives. But walking around barefoot, being barefoot in your house, being barefoot in safe environments, walking barefoot, I think is a fantastic way to sort of increase the proprioceptive stimulus in your foot, strengthen your arches, strengthen your toes, start mobilizing your toes. And I think toe separators, like learning to spread your toes and relax your metatarsals, but you've got to be really, really patient and play a long game. You've got to say to myself, look, if you've had orthotics and weak feet and scrunched up toes and a bad bunion you decide you want to go into sort of barefoot or minimalist or strengthen your feet, that's a 2 to 5 year project. And as soon as you take the agenda out of it and you just be comfortable with where you're at and put one foot in front of another and look for progress, not perfection, it'll be one of the most rewarding and empowering things you can do. No one has ever said, oh my God, my feet are just too strong and awesome. It's such a burden.
Brilliant. Lawrence, those super, really wise words, and I'm hoping people listening will take heed and get walking bare feet. And if you're thinking about running, maybe take a 2 to 5 year view on that. Lawrence,
the dose for, sorry Tim, I'm going to interrupt you quickly.
Yeah.
I know you're on time. The dose I recommend for like professional athletes would be 2 20-minute barefoot runs a week. If they can do that, it's magnificent. It's all about 15 minutes. And sometimes for them, that's just a cool down.
Yeah.
And they'll do it often on the treadmill.
Okay.
So at the end of a set, run, maybe warm up 5 minutes barefoot, put your shoes on, do it a session, and then 10 minutes easy jogging cool down. But they'll build it up. They'll build up to that with, 1 minute, 1 minute barefoot, slow jogging. So remember, the faster you run barefoot, the more you're going to bend your big toe.
Okay.
So run slowly when you run barefoot. Don't try and want speed and performance and. Don't be greedy. So slow jogging barefoot, 1 minute, twice a week, and over a long period of time, build that up as you're super, super comfortable to 15 or 20 minutes twice a week is more than enough to strengthen your feet.
Amazing. Such a lot of information and really helpful. And I just love your holistic approach, Lawrence, and the way that you've integrated all of that into Inner Runner. I'm going to get all your information and put it in the show notes so that people can get access to he does a lot of Instagram posts, which are really informative. And obviously we'll put the workshops on there. And is there a book in the offing? Is there
The big deal is that I want to do Inner Runner workshop, which will be like an online, probably 12-week, that kind of structure on really how to reframe and rethink running and empower yourself through running. And once that's out there, and then got to learn from feedback. Again, a pet peeve is people write books and then change their mind.
Yeah.
I want to try to write a book that'll survive 1,000 years. So yeah.
Don't take too long.
The big thing will be do the Inner Runner workshop, give it a year or two and see how people respond to it and get really a sense of feedback. And then once we've really got something that's robust, that doesn't injure people, that's empowering, that's simple, that people can understand, that a lot of people can get, and is safe, then a book.
Awesome, man. Thanks so much, Lawrence. It's been amazing.
Thanks, Tim. So nice to see you again. Okay, take care.
I hope that Lawrence inspired you to rediscover the joys of walking and running. While he lives in Colorado, you'll be pleased to know that he offers various services, including online courses, workshops, masterclasses, one-on-one structural integration sessions, and community events. I personally love his Instagram feed as he regularly posts helpful tips on movement and life. He also demonstrates helpful exercises to assist every level of runner, from people attempting couch to 5K right up to elite athletes. You'll find his website and social media contacts in the show notes. Why not join us in connecting more deeply with nature, as well as stimulating your nervous system, by walking more barefoot? Let me know how you get on with this and leave a comment on what differences you've noticed. Until next time, stay light on your feet.